Roose Bolton has had a rapid rise in A Song of Ice and Fire and is now Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. But what's next? And what is Roose Bolton's master plan? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. On this channel we cover the best in fantasy books and TV shows. A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings, The Witcher and much more. If you like the sound of that, there's a subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen. This video was produced with History of Westeros. If you want to dive even deeper into the history and lore of George R.R. Martin's world, I'd highly recommend you check out their excellent YouTube channel or podcast. There's a link in the description. When we're introduced to Roose Bolton towards the end of Book 1, he is one of a number of larger-than-life heads of northern houses, answering Robb's calling of the banners, and he immediately stands out, demanding command of the northern armies due to his station and Robb's youth. Robb declines and leads himself, but when choosing to split his army, he does give control of the part heading down the King's Road to Roose. We're told that Robb is unnerved by Roose's eyes, soft voice, and the rumours of the Dreadfort's flayed skin chamber, but it doesn't impact his level of trust in him during the war, or the authority he grants him. He trusts Roose with his army because Roose is clever and cautious, unlike Great John Umber, say, who is clearly more loyal, but perhaps a bit more rash. The plan was for Lord Bolton to take on Tywin, while Robb rushed to relieve Riverrun from Jaime's army. Robb was aware enough that Roose was a cunning and cold man to see how he was the right man for this, but not aware enough to see how that could be turned against him. Roose led a night attack on Tywin's forces, attempting to catch the Lannisters off guard to negate their numerical superiority. Tywin assumed Robb was leading the Northern Army and designed his strategy to defeat a brash young man. This played right into Roose's hands, because he's not a brash young man, but a cautious and reserved older man. Regardless, the element of surprise and Tywin's miscalculation was not enough to overcome Tywin's numbers and better armed forces. Many have theorised that Roose lost the battle on purpose, that he was already plotting with Tywin. None other than George R.R. Martin himself has pushed back against this idea. He says that Roose was still weighing up his options at this point, and that if he had won the Battle of the Green Fork, his reputation would have skyrocketed. He would have been the man that defeated the great Tywin Lannister with an inferior force, a victory that would have enabled him to climb the ladder of power and glory in a more conventional manner. Which brings me to something else George R.R. Martin has said about Roose Bolton that will probably help us understand him a bit better. He said that, if you reread all his sections carefully, I think you will see a picture of a man keeping all his options open as long as he could, sniffing the wind, covering his tracks, ready to jump either way. In other words, Roose did not plan to betray the Starks from the beginning, but he was more than prepared to do so if the opportunity presented itself. It tells us that for him, loyalty is irrelevant, that only what he can get away with matters, and he wants to get as much as he can. Put another way, Roose only looks out for Roose. Looking back, he's willing to be extremely bloody and make huge grabs for power, but he's not willing to take great risks to his own person. For someone who makes such big moves in the Game of Thrones, he is very risk-averse. When he kills Robb Stark, he's so heavily armoured for the Red Wedding that Catelyn doesn't even recognise him. When he travels through the neck, he has a body double wear his clothes and ride in his wheelhouse in case of Cranagman sharpshooters and their deadly poisons. At Winterfell, Lady Dustin points out to Theon that Roose only eats from dishes that Lord Manderley has already tasted. These actions all confirm Tywin Lannister's assessment that Roose is a wary man. So, we have an ambitious, opportunistic man who hides his intentions well and is risk-averse enough not to do anything rash until he is 100% sure things will go his way. He may not have been planning to overthrow the Starks from the beginning, but he was definitely willing to seize the opportunity if it presented itself. The last video in this series set out all of the foreshadowing that was there for the Red Wedding. George R.R. Martin gave us a lot. In that, I suggested that the moment Roose decided to switch sides was the day he sent part of his army, coincidentally that part that contained the most Stark loyalists and none of his Bolton soldiers, to Duskendale into what turned out to be a trap. But that wasn't the first time that Roose had rather callously used the ongoing war effort to strengthen his own hand, regardless of ultimately which side came out on top. While he didn't lose the Battle of the Green Fork against Tywin on purpose, he made sure the casualties his side suffered benefited him most. Lord Medgar of House Cerwyn, the house closest to Winterfell and long renowned for their loyalty to the Starks, died shortly after the battle to wounds received during it. Also captured was Sir Willis Manderley, the heir to White Harbour, also famous for their loyalty to the Starks, and House Hornwood took the greatest losses of all, with their lord killed in the battle, and his only son and heir killed by Jaime. Not long after, Roose's bastard son Ramsay forcibly married Lady Donella Hornwood, the new widow, to claim the Hornwood lands. There's really only one way Ramsay could have known of those deaths so soon after. Roose told him, and gave him the go-ahead, though Roose obviously later claims that Ramsay acted on his own in order to absolve himself of any possible blame. This is Roose hedging his bets. Had the Starks won the war, Ramsay would probably have been forced to give back his new lands, but there's a chance he wouldn't. Perhaps he might be able to keep them as a reward for House Bolton's crucial role in the war, or because Roose had grown so strong that King Robb had to allow it to keep him happy. Thus, there's no risk to Roose at all in this play, but a lot of potential gain. After gathering the remains of his army together and learning that the Starks were doing quite well in the war and had tied themselves to the Freys, Roose then did the same by himself, marrying Lady Walder Frey. The advantages at this point were clear. Had the marriages to Robb and Arya gone through as agreed, Lady Walder would have been kin to the Queen in the North. Roose could have pushed for his children with his new wife to marry the children of Robb and his Frey bride, given their close but not too close family connections. So Roose was tying himself to the new royal family. Roose's marriage also meant that Winterfell couldn't use their new and substantial Frey manpower against the Dreadfort without attacking their own kin. So Roose was positioning himself to advance whatever the outcome of the war was. Then came something unexpected. Robb's hasty decision to break off his engagement and marry Jane Westerling. The Freys with Robb stomped on a Stark banner and rode off. The Freys with Roose complained as well and cited Stannis' loss on the Blackwater as a reason why their cause was lost anyway. Robb would now definitely lose the war, they cried. Much was made of Lord Walder Frey's anger over being denied a royal marriage. His complaints were made a focus and a primary motivation for his terrible revenge, so it's easy to miss that this was being taken away from Roose as well. He thought he had just married the sister, or at least a close relation, of a future queen, but instead he just found himself married to a powerful but lesser Riverlands house. So by marrying Jane Westerling, Robb set Bolton ambition back as well. Not to mention Arya was thought dead, so that's another missed connection to the new royal family. Arya was due to marry another Frey. This gave the Freys and the Boltons a shared grievance against House Stark. Both were cut out from this new inner circle simultaneously for a lesser house in the Westerlands. And crucially, not only were their ambitions and incentives removed, they no longer saw themselves as on the likely winning side. They were no longer going to reap the rewards of victory, which was the other main reason to be in the war in the first place. It's pretty clear that Roose had considered that possibility in advance, though, and how he might react to it. His plans had to change, but when we see him faced with the crumbling of all he'd done so far due to Robb's breaking of his betrothal and so on, he doesn't seem even slightly put out. He always knew there was a chance the North would lose. Thus, betrayal was always an option for him. It simply wasn't his first choice. So he gets into contact with Tywin. I spoke elsewhere about his reasons for sending the Glovers and Tallhearts to attack Duskendale, but in this context, the two important things are that he clearly won the trust of, or at least an alliance with, Tywin Lannister, and managed to eliminate even more of the Stark loyalist soldiers in his command, without rousing too much suspicion. This is the second time Roose has used this tactic of secretly putting soldiers he wants to eliminate in the front line and protecting his own troops. Keep an eye on that, he'll do it again more than once. Because then came that slight complication with Jaime Lannister. Jaime got delivered into Roose's hands while he was still pretending to be loyal to Robb Stark. He should have given Jaime up straight away, but that would have ruined any burgeoning alliance with Tywin Lannister. And to make things worse, Vargo Hoat had cut off Jaime's hand, and Tywin would definitely blame Roose for that. So Roose thinks on his feet and basically negotiates with Jaime. He sends Jaime on to King's Landing with a guard, and Jaime promises to say Roose wasn't to blame for the whole hand incident. It works, and he heads north, summoned to attend a wedding at the Twins, then presumably be a part of Robb's plan to retake his homeland from the Ironborn. He takes his time leading his army to the Twins for what becomes the Red Wedding. On the way to the Twins, at a river crossing, his rearguard is attacked by Gregor Clegane and the Lannister army, but it just so happens that all the Dreadfort men were already across the river. Once again, the casualties were shockingly entirely Stark loyalists, particularly House Manderley. And in particular, Sir Willis Manderley, the heir, was again taken captive, forcing Lord Wyman Manderley to proceed cautiously lest his son be executed. How did House Lannister know to ambush the Northern Army then and wait for the Boltons to be safe before they attacked? I think we can guess. The result is that Roose now arrived at the Red Wedding with all his own troops and none of those loyal to Robb. We know what happened at the wedding, although you may not have noticed the subtle power play that Roose does, just to make sure that Walder Frey does what he needs to do. We often think of the Red Wedding as being driven by House Frey, but Cat notices something. Roose gives a little speech in which he mentions Big and Little Walder Frey and how they are very much under his protection in the Dreadfort. We see the elderly Lord Walder Frey squirm at the implied threat. It's clear who is really in charge here. After the wedding, someone unexpected joined Roose's army heading north, now aiming to reclaim the north in the name of House Bolton, and supported by House Lannister. Arya Stark. Or at least Jane Poole, Sansa's childhood friend who had been given to Roose Bolton by Littlefinger. Arya was just a child when she left the north, so who knows what she looks like now, was the thinking. Just by the by, there's an intriguing comparison to be made between Roose Bolton and Littlefinger's approaches to advancement. They are very different in character, of course, but when you get down to it, they both rely on reacting very quickly to changing events and using them to climb the ladder. Roose here shifts immediately from planning to be married into the Stark royal family to trying to become Warden of the North himself. The difference is that Littlefinger proactively tries to create the chaos he wants to gain an advantage from, and Roose just introvertedly plans out all the possibilities in advance. Anyway, Jane Poole, masquerading as Arya, is soon betrothed to Ramsay, who Roose legitimizes. If you're wondering about Lady Hornwood, who Ramsay married just a little bit ago, sadly she died. Ramsay is, well, you know what Ramsay is like. Marrying a Stark is clearly a step up, and he has Theon Greyjoy now under his control, who can confirm to anyone interested that this is indeed Arya Stark. Everyone knows that Theon grew up with Arya, and why would he lie about that? Moat Cailin is swiftly dealt with by Ramsay, and Roose heads straight for Winterfell. The Dreadfort may have previously been home and was definitely defendable, but Winterfell is the capital of the North, so he needs to secure that to cement his position as Warden of the North. Roose knows that not all of the Northern Lords are 100% on side, but he has done the groundwork. The Starks are dead. Only Sansa at this stage is known to be alive, and she is now a Lannister by marriage, so there's no one for opposition to rally around. The next most powerful family, the Manderleys, are hamstrung by having their heir a prisoner of the Lannisters. Great John Umber is a prisoner of the Freys, the Karstarks are split, and the Dustins and Ricewells are seemingly loyal because of family links. The other major families have all lost most of their troops in the war in the south. The unexpected joker in the pack here is Stannis, who has brought his army to the north and seems to be intent on dethroning Roose. Oh, and winter has, of course, come. It's so bad that the snowdrifts are tens of feet high against Winterfell's walls, and 6 of the 7 gates to Winterfell have literally frozen shut. Again, Roose makes the best use of his circumstances. He holds up in Winterfell while letting Stannis' army suffer the winter storms. Added to which, he has come to a secret arrangement with Arnulf Karstark, who wants to be made the Lord of the Carhold. Arnulf has attached himself to Stannis, but plans to betray him when the time is right. If Stannis can be defeated, Roose will be almost guaranteed to remain in power through the winter, assuming that he doesn't know or care about the others, that is, which nearly brings us up to date. One small problem that has arisen are the murders in Winterfell and on the road to Winterfell of mostly Freys and Boltons, and the resultant escalating tensions within Winterfell between the Freys and the Manderleys. It turns violent very quickly between those two, and Roose's solution is to send Frey and Manderley troops out of Winterfell to face Stannis. Again, Roose has used a battle to keep his own forces safe and to put his rival soldiers into danger. It's the 4th time he's done it, but he keeps on getting away with it. At the start of this video, we asked what Roose Bolton's master plan was, and it turns out that he doesn't really have one. He's an opportunist, but a risk-averse one, someone who plans meticulously and makes the best of every opportunity. That said, the problems for Roose will soon stack up. He's made his play to take over the north on the basis that there are no more Starks, but contrary to what he thinks, Bran and Rickon are alive, and House Manderley are actively searching for Rickon. Arya is also still alive. Sansa is married to a Lannister, but perhaps she might get her marriage annulled. And there's every chance that Robb legitimised Jon Snow in his will. The Starks and their allies will come for him. And probably so, at some point, will his natural-born son, Ramsay. Roose is very open about that. He knows what Ramsay is like, and he also understands his own mortality. He's no longer a young man by Westerosi standards. This is what he confides to Theon about his wife and his future prospects. If she, his wife, pops out sons the way she pops in tarts, the Dreadfort will soon be overrun with Boltons. Ramsay will kill them all, of course. That's for the best. I will not live long enough to see new sons to manhood. As a northerner, Roose has no illusions about his own mortality, despite how cautious he is, but his callous disregard for his own children, his wife, and, well, everyone but himself, is just as cold, just as chilling as the winter that comes for everyone in the end. And it seems that he has one last objective: to become King of the North. He confides this to Lady Barbary Dustin. She says this to Theon: Lord Bolton aspires to more than mere lordship. Why not King of the North? Tywin Lannister is dead, the Kingslayer is maimed, the imp is fled. The Lannisters are a spent force, and you were kind enough to rid him of the Starks. Old Walder Frey will not object to his fat little Walder becoming a queen. White Harbour might prove troublesome should Lord Wyman survive this coming battle, but I'm quite sure that he will not. No more than Stannis. Roose will remove both of them as he removed the young wolf. Who else is there? Who else is there indeed? Well, quite a few people, as it turns out. People that Roose, with all his planning, has not considered. People who are very powerful and will want him gone. Jon, Bran, Arya, Lord Manderley, Melisandre, Mance Rayder, the list goes on. But before that day comes, Roose Bolton wants to rise as high as he can, and by whatever means necessary. The world is his plaything, there purely for his amusement. He wants to get rid of Stannis, then he wants to be king, then, well, he doesn't really care. He's going to die anyway. And perhaps that is what makes him so dangerous. He won't overreach, he won't take shortcuts with his own security, and he's already accepted that he won't live many more years. Make no mistake, Roose Bolton will have a big role to play in the Winds of Winter, and probably not a positive one. If you'd like to see more videos in this series on what will happen in the north in the Winds of Winter and beyond, please click on the link to the playlist on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, the best way to do that is by clicking on the link to Patreon on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.